Hello and welcome to Get on the Bus 2021. I'm Kelly Turley from Amnesty International Local Group 133 based in Somerville, Massachusetts. And we're so thrilled that so many of you could join us live, and we know that many more people will be able to watch the recording of our event today. Get on the Bus for Human Rights is an annual day of human rights education and action. And pre-pandemic, we had the event each year in New York City, organizing students and Amnesty International members, as well as other human rights activists and concerned citizens, to join us in New York City to be able to do.
Welcome back, Kelly.
So clearly there's going to be some internet problems here in Somerville. Sorry about that. So we have some other co-hosts who hopefully will be able to jump in if this happens again. But we're normally have a day of human rights education and action in New York City, as I mentioned, and time to gather in front of different consulates, UN missions, and corporate headquarters. This year, obviously, that wasn't possible for public health concerns, but we're really thrilled that you're able to join us online. And we hope that you'll continue to take action with us when we reconvene, Get on the Bus in person, but also to take action in your own communities around the world to raise awareness about human rights issues. This year's event will focus on several global human rights issues, including calling for justice and accountability in Sri Lanka for the murders of Rajihar Manoharan and the Trinco Five, calling on the US government to end the use of the federal death penalty, calling on Honduras for justice for the murder of environmental activist and human rights defender Berta Cáceres. We'll also be calling on the Chinese government to end the mass detentions of Uyghur people and unconditionally release all prisoners of conscience, including Uyghur economist Ilham Tohti and all Tibetan political prisoners. And we ask you to join us also taking action online, doing letter writing actions, which we'll be posting in the chat and as well in follow-up emails. So we have a number of amazing human rights activists joining us today as speakers. And so our plan is to ask them to unmute and to speak. The agenda is in the chat. We'll post it there periodically because I know that if you joined after it was put in the chat, you won't see it. But the materials are all on our website, which is www.gotb.org. And I want to just also encourage people, if you have a chance. I see that some people are introducing themselves in the chat. If you have an opportunity, just let us know who you are, where you're zooming in from, and if there's a Amnesty group or organization that you're connected to, please put that in the chat. And just letting a few more people in. Great. So not sure if our first speaker is here. If you are a speaker, if you don't mind making sure that your Zoom name matches your real name, so we can find you to unmute you and to spotlight you. Arthi, is Babu Ram here?
I don't see him here now.
Okay, so we will, as it is in Zoom world, we'll probably mix and match the agenda a little bit. So first I want to, I'm going to turn it over to our colleague, Scott Langley. Scott is the Death Penalty Action Coordinator for this year's Get on the Bus and the State Death Penalty Abolition Coordinator for Amnesty International USA. And Scott will introduce our death penalty abolition action. And I'll ask you to unmute Scott. And
am I good? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I'm logged on to two computers, so sorry for the confusion here. All right, so I want to introduce our death penalty action that we're here as part of Get on the Bus. And I am the state death penalty coordinator for New York, and also I'm the regional death penalty coordinator for Amnesty for the entire Northeast region. And every year, Amnesty issues a global execution and death penalty report. And the one that was just released last month for 2020 details the fact that the United States has continued to be a leader in the use of executions worldwide. So for the 12th consecutive year, the United States was the only country in the entire Americas region that carried out any executions in the US. And we were one of only 18 countries that continued to use the execution in 2020, despite the COVID pandemic. And for decades, Amnesty has always documented that the United States leads the world in executions, always remaining in the top 10 of executions each year. And the other countries who join us in that company are countries like China, Iran, Egypt, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, and such. So that's the company we keep with the death penalty. And last year in the United States in 2020, for the first time perhaps ever, we saw that federal executions outpaced the use of state executions. Under the Trump administration, we saw 13 federal prisoners executed in Trump's last 6 months of office, which was a historic and tragic occurrence because in the last 60 years, 60, there had only been 3 federal executions entirely. And under Trump, there was 13 in his last 6 months. So the death penalty has been a thing happening in the United States and continues. There was an execution just 2 nights ago in Texas. So this is something that continues on. And I'm going to post some links in the chat about the report that Amnesty released about worldwide executions and also some actions. Because the federal executions have been restarted, there has been a call to Congress to abolish the federal death penalty. And we currently have multiple bills in the House and also a bill in the Senate to abolish the federal death penalty. And I'm going to include links in the chat for your people to take action. There's multiple opportunities for action to let your members of Congress know that you're against the use of the federal death penalty in the US, and there are actions that can be tweeted, emailed, and also writing letters to the editor if you so choose. And so that is our focus, is encouraging the US government to abolish the federal death penalty after what happened with the Trump administration, to make sure that doesn't happen again. So that's the quick download of that. But what I want to do is introduce our first Get on the Bus speaker today, which is Derek Jameson. Derek, I consider him a friend of mine. We've traveled around the country speaking to people to tell the story of what it's like for someone to be innocent on death row. And Derek is one of the 185 prisoners in the US who have been exonerated from death row, meaning that they were put there despite being innocent. And Derek himself actually came within 6 times of being executed by the state of Ohio, where he spent 20 years on death row for a crime he didn't commit. And his last execution that was stayed came within just 90 minutes of him being executed. That's how close the state of Ohio came to executing an innocent person. And the reason was because prosecutors withheld key evidence in his case. And like other death row inmates, Derek has experienced profound isolation and the fear of being that close to the government executing him. And he saw multiple of his friends removed from death row and executed during his 20 years there. It's a tragic story. And Derek is here to share with us about a little bit about his story. And also, just so you know, he works with an organization called Witness to Innocence, and Witness to Innocence organizes other death row exonerees around the country to tell their stories and encourage people to take action to understand the true tragic case of possible innocent people being executed by the government. So I want to pass this over to Derek so we can hear from our first speaker. So welcome, Derek. I don't believe you're in Ohio anymore, but you can just introduce us to where you are and what you're doing these days and a little bit about your story.
Oops. Derek, you should be able to unmute now.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I was sent to die October the 25th of 1985. And it was the worst day of my life, Scott. But the on October the 25th of 2005, 20 years later, the same day, I was released from Ohio death row. You know, uh, the same day I was leaving death row, they were preparing my friend William Williams for execution the same day I was leaving, October the 25th of 2005, the best day of my life. But the death penalty, it was so tragic, man, watching all my friends uh, uh, die one after another, it's just, we need to find a way, some other way to treat our human beings in America. We're one of the only civilized countries that still killing our citizens. We're making a lot of mistakes. Like you said, Scott, it's 185 death row exonerees in the United States. That's 185 reasons we need to end the death penalty in the United States because we're making too many mistakes. That's 185 men and women who was wrongfully convicted and incarcerated and almost murdered for something they didn't do. I had 6 days of executions when I was on Ohio death row. Can you imagine that? I was innocent and then watching all my friends die in front of me, man. It's awful feeling. We need to find something to do other than kill our citizens. We're making too many mistakes in the United States. And I'm so proud to be a part of Witness to Innocence. Witness to Innocence is an organization that help death row exonerees speak out all over the world against the death penalty. And I'm proud to be a part of this, so we need to end the death penalty in America. We're making too many mistakes, I'm one of them, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, was executed at the age of 33. Why are we still executing human beings in America? We making too many mistakes and we need to stop it, Should nobody have the power to say who should live or die in America? Because in the states that's got the death penalty, you're giving up too much power, having the death penalty in your state, We need to end the death penalty in the United States as a whole, We're making too many mistakes, We got a thing called life without parole. We need to use that, or life. Most people don't like that life without parole, but life, because if you make a mistake with life without parole or life, you could go get this man out of his cell and release him. But with the death penalty, if you make a mistake, you can't go release this man from the grave. I watched all my friends die. I watched all these human beings get destroyed. I lost so many friends. Almost 18 people, man. 18 of my friends I watched get executed. They were my best friends. That's why I'm gonna continue to speak out all over the world against the death penalty, and hope y'all help us abolish the death penalty all over the world, man. Thank y'all. Scotty? Hey, Scott?
Yeah, thank you, Derek, for that. We really appreciate it. It's a powerful witness to be able to hear from you. And you're doing a lot of great work to educate people. And, we're getting rid of the death penalty a little bit at a time. And if people check the chat, there's calls for action for other people to try and get rid of this death penalty. We can do it at the state level. We can do it at the federal level. And your story is hopefully something that we can hold in our hearts as we move forward with ways to end this. It's cruel.
Yeah, because, having the death penalty, like this Wednesday, they executed a guy in Texas. Think about it. That ain't helping deter crime. That's causing more crime because y'all just committed a murder. Y'all just executed a man. That's making it worse. That ain't making the world more safer by killing our citizens. We're one of the only civilized countries that's still killing our citizens. We need to stop it. Shouldn't no man have the right to say who should live or die in America? Thank you, Scotty, for the work you've done, brother. I know me and you are part of DC 18, and I remember that day, man. Remember what we went through, you know, in Washington, DC, brother. That was amazing, man. Thank you. And it's amazing to see you. And I'm always happy to see you, brother. Thank you for the great work you do to help end this thing called the death penalty, you know, this evil thing called the death penalty, you know. Thank you so much, brother.
Thank you both to Derek and Scott, and especially to you, Derek, for your testimony, your witness here today, and your advocacy. And we look forward to partnering with you to end the death penalty in the US and continue that work to end the death penalty around the globe.
Thank you so much. Thank you. God bless y'all. God bless you.
So next, I'll turn it over to our colleague, Arthi, who's going to introduce our Sri Lanka action.
Oh, hello, everyone. My name is Arthi, and I'm a member of Amnesty Group 133 and the Sri Lanka Action Co-Coordinator. Today, I will be introducing the speaker for our Sri Lankan action, which is Justice and Accountability for Ragihar Manoharan and the Trinco Five. The Trinco Five includes Ragihar Manoharan and 4 other Sri Lankan Tamil students who were killed by security forces on January 2nd, 2006 in the city of Trincomalee in northeastern Sri Lanka. The authorities have failed to effectively prosecute anyone for their murder. The Trinco Five is a very emblematic case because the outcome of that case is quite emblematic of Sri Lanka not delivering justice for serious crimes committed against its civilians. That being said, it is my pleasure to introduce our second speaker to you today, who will speak more on this case, Mr. Babu Ram Pant. Babu Ram Pant is a human rights activist from Nepal. He's currently working as a South Asia campaigner at Amnesty International. He has extensive experience working with youth activists on human rights campaigns at national, regional, and global levels. Before joining Amnesty, Babu Ram was the director of programs at Associations of Youth Organizations Nepal, or AON, which is a network of 92 youth organizations in Nepal. He worked as a member of Youth Coalition for Sexual and Reproductive Rights, a global network of youth activists. And from 2012 to 2017, he was a vice chair of board of directors from 2013, 2015. At Youth Coalition, he supported in building the advocacy skills of youth activists in Asia Pacific and carrying out advocacy at important policy forums at national and international levels, including at the UN General Assembly. Previously, Babu Ram also worked with the United Nations Populations Funds in Nepal at the UN headquarters as a special youth fellow, where he contributed to bringing youth and human rights perspectives into the works of the organization. He served on the Program Advisory Committee of Asia Pacific Resource and Research Center for Women from 2012 to 2018. So now I'll go ahead and pass it over to Babu Ram. Babu Ram? I think he's in there somewhere. Oh, there you are.
Yeah, can you hear me? Thank you, Anand. Thank you for the introduction. As you said, my name is Babu Ram and I'm from Nepal. And right now I'm working with South Asia office at Amnesty International based in Colombo. And I mostly focus my work on Nepal and Sri Lanka and occasionally on Bhutan and Maldives as well. I'm really glad to be joining the session today of Get on the Bus. Thank you, Jim and Arthi, for inviting me and having me here. Just before going into the Trinco 5 and Ragihar Manoharan case, I don't know if most of the participants here know about the background of Sri Lanka and what the human rights situation in Sri Lanka is. So I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself. If others have joined the previous year's session, they might know the background, but just I'll take a couple of minutes just to explain the background of human rights situation in Sri Lanka. As many of you might know, the case that we'll be talking about in terms of the action on Trinco 5 is a case from 2006, which is during the time of internal armed conflict in Sri Lanka, that happened, and that is one of the emblematic cases in Sri Lanka. And unfortunately, that's not the only case or only human rights violation that happened in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka has a long history of internal armed conflict, more than almost 3 decades of armed conflict, and during that time, a lot of human rights violation, including war crimes, humanitarian law violation, and international human rights violation took place during that time. And Amnesty we estimate that more than 60,000 cases of disappearance are there, which is almost one of the largest cases of enforced disappearance in the world. So that is the situation of Sri Lanka. So in 2009, the conflict ended in 2009. And after that, there have been calls for justice and accountability for human rights violation committed during the war from both sides, and more so also from the government side, because the government has been in power after 2009 until 2015, especially the people who were in power were implicated with war crimes and serious human rights violation committed during that time. So after 2015, there was a slight hope for victims because the new government came in power, and they kind of came into the power in the promise that they will support actions for accountability and justice for the human rights violation committed during the conflict period. And after that, through much more international pressure, the government committed at the UN Human Rights Council to a resolution to work towards securing justice and accountability for the victims of human rights violation during the conflict. It was a slow process, but it didn't go too far. And after the new government that came in power in 2019, they have said that they won't agree to the Human Rights Council resolution. They backed away from the resolution, and after that, even the pursuit of justice and accountability has been dented in a way, because as we have documented from 2019 onwards, especially after 2020, when the new government came in power, there have been obstruction, deliberate efforts to obstruct justice and even intimidate victims, lawyers, and activists who are working towards justice in Sri Lanka, including more intimidation of lawyers, human rights defenders, even media houses, that we have seen the pattern of targeting of media houses, lawyers, and activists, especially after 2020, when the new governments came in power. The current president was the defense secretary during the war, when finally, especially the final moment of the war, when in 2009, when most of the human rights violation took place at large scale, and also the prime minister, then president is right now the prime minister. So there is a deliberate attempt to intimidate activists, lawyers, and even law enforcement officers. We have noticed, for example, the CID officers, the director of the Criminal Investigation Department, who was pursuing some of this human rights violation during the conflict period and after the conflict period, he has been targeted and arrested for bogus charges, apparently. So that is the situation in Sri Lanka overall, in terms of what happened, in terms of impunity for past crimes, as well as more worrying signs that the situation is getting really bad in terms of human rights, freedom of expression, freedom of association, and media freedom in the country as well. Now, going into the Trinco 5 case, as Arati briefly mentioned about the background of the case, I wanted to show a video. So I don't know how this works. Can anyone help me?
Yeah,
show a
you're a
video?
co-host, so you should be able to, you have a YouTube video, right?
Yeah, it's a YouTube video. So should I be sharing the screen?
Yep.
Can you see it?
Just see your name right now.
Not the YouTube link, right?
Yeah, so if you choose for screen share to share the screen where the YouTube video is screening. Yeah,
Can you see it now?
yes.
They killed my son. Very close. No? They killed my son. Why? That is pre-planned murder. That's the reason, I think. I visited the mortuary. The first, I opened the door, and the first body is my son's body. Then I am completely fed up. My son got a 5 gunshot. That the doctor report says very well. I am giving the first evidence for my son's murder. That is clearly so. The forces are done by the forces are done this murder very clearly. After that, I got a lot of life threat. Not I am only. My sons also got a life threat. Then I can stay there. Anyway, I want to flash my rights. If I am there, I can't flash my rights. I have no any human rights in Sri Lanka. That's the reason I am here and I fight in that case. Sometime the Sri Lankan government not to give a good judgment, but I hope the international level they give a good judgment for me. Definitely, I hope that. I hope the international level give a good judgment to my son.
Sorry, I don't know how. Am I back?
We can't see you. We just see your name. Yeah.
Sorry, it looks like I'm back. So that is the story of Raghihar Manoharan, as was narrated by his father, Dr. Manoharan. So as Arthi also said previously, it is the case from 2006 during New Year, where 5 Tamil students were in the beach in a town called Trincomalee in Sri Lanka, and they were thrown a grenade, and after that they were killed at point blank range by the Sri Lankan security forces called the special forces, the SDF, and even more than 15, almost 15 years now. Dr. Manoharan and other victims have been pursuing justice, including after a lot of international pressure. Then President had commissioned a presidential inquiry in 2006. But shortly after that, the suspected 13 members of the security forces were released. And after that, again in 2013 July, the 13 people were arrested again, and they were, but shortly after that, again after 3 months, they were released. After a lot of international pressure, again, especially after 2015, when the new government changed and the government committed through the UN Human Rights Commission resolution that they will work towards justice and accountability. There were some efforts and there was some progress, including in other cases. But in 2019 July, the magistrate, one of the courts in Sri Lanka, they acquitted all the 13 security forces, citing no evidence. There was no evidence, lack of evidence in the case. And again, after that, there was an international outcry, including Amnesty and other human rights group expressed concern about the security forces being acquitted. And after that, again, after 1 month in August 2019, the Attorney General of Sri Lanka again reopened the case, and they said that they will open the investigation of the case. But after that, the government changed, and we haven't seen much progress in the case. So right now, it looks a little bit bleak in terms of international justice for Sri Lanka. But I just wanted to also mention that in March 2021, there is a bit of progress because the UN Human Rights Office, the UN Commissioner for Human Rights, released a report in March 2021 this year, saying that the human rights situation in Sri Lanka is really concerning, and there is a real risk of return to the past human rights violation and gross impunity. And there was a conclusion that the domestic mechanisms have been unable and unwilling to give justice and accountability for the victims of during the conflict and for the past crimes. So leading from that, and we as Amnesty released our own report, and there were other reports, a very similar report echoing the concerns of the UN Human Rights Chief. So after that, in March 2021, this year, there was a resolution, international resolution on Sri Lanka passed at the UN Human Rights Commission. So that was a big win because after a lot of pressure from international community, there was a resolution passed with the mandate to monitor the ongoing human rights violation in Sri Lanka, as well as document the evidence of the past abuses for future prosecutions. So this is a really big hope for the victims of human rights violation during the conflict and after that in Sri Lanka. And we are hoping that this resolution will help for international community, especially through the UN's Human Rights Office, to gather more information and evidence for future prosecution, which might be through universal jurisdiction, as well as ICC referral. And if these also fail, then including international accountability mechanism. So there has been some progress this year, especially after large-scale international pressure from activists, civil society, and even some of the governments that were leading in the calls for justice and accountability in Sri Lanka. So for the Trinco 5, as this is one of the emblematic case that signifies that kind of is an image for justice from during the conflict era that were committed by the government forces. So taking action on this case will give a hope not only for the victims of this crime in particular, but also for other victims from the conflict era and after that was human rights have been violated. So they will see this as a hope that finally justice can be done, and even how powerful the government might be, a lot of international pressure from all around the world will help the victims secure justice. So I really hope that whoever is here, you will share the action with others as well as you'll take actions on this case. I'll quickly share the link to one of the actions on the group chat as well for the Trinco 5 action. And I really hope that we can reignite the quest for justice on this case, and we can also give an example about the end of impunity and the fight for justice for many victims of human rights violation and war crimes in Sri Lanka. And I'll be happy to take any questions if any of you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Baburam, and also to Arti, as well as to Jim, who's one of the other coordinators for the Sri Lanka action this year. So wanted to turn next to Larry Ledutke. Larry is the Get on the Bus Honduras Action Coordinator along with Deirdre. He's also the chair of the Central America Mexico Coordination Group for Amnesty International USA and is the El Salvador Country Specialist, as well as the New Jersey Legislative Coordinator for AI USA. So Larry has a lot of roles, including being our Get on the Bus speaker today for our Honduras Action, which focuses on justice and accountability for the murder of environmental activist and human rights defender Berta Cáceres. So I'll turn it over to Larry.
Hi. Hi, I'm also a member of local group 1012 in North Jersey, and our group has been pushing for justice in Berta Cáceres' case since 2017. Get on the Bus also featured Berta's case in 2017. Berta was an internationally renowned environmental and indigenous rights leader in Honduras. She co-founded COPIN, the Civic Council of Indigenous and Popular Organizations of Honduras. Berta led the group in its fight against the construction of a hydroelectric dam on a river that is sacred to the Lanka and indigenous people in Honduras and El Salvador. The project would cause great hardship to the local community. The company joined forces with the government to sow division within the community and smeared Berta as a criminal as well as an enemy of development and Honduras itself. She received the prestigious Goldman Environmental Prize, which recognizes environmental defenders who face extreme danger. After years of threats and harassment, Berta was murdered on March 2nd, 2016. The government's first response was to treat Gustavo Castro, a Mexican activist who survived the attack, as a suspect and to claim that members of Berta's own organization had been behind the killing. The government finally investigated the most obvious culprits, those behind the dam, only because of pressure from activists around the world. As a result of this pressure, 7 people who carried out the murder were finally sentenced to prison in 2019. Berta's family, COPIN, Amnesty International, and others have continued to press the government to identify and punish those who planned and ordered the killing. After many delays, the former manager of the company behind the dam project, David Castillo, is finally being tried for planning and organizing Berta's death. His attorneys have continued delaying the trial, which may be wrapped up on June 11th. Without international pressure, however, there will be more delays and justice may never be served. We also need to keep up the pressure to ensure that all those responsible for planning and ordering the crime are identified and punished. Continuing pressure is also needed to protect members of COPIN who continue to face threats and violence. Global Witness reported that Honduras has remained the most dangerous country in the world for environmental defenders as of 2019. Today, we're calling on US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to push for justice for Berta. I would take questions if anybody has them, or otherwise, that's what I prepared.
Great. Thank you so much, Larry. And please do put your questions in the chat if you have any. We will try to get to them during our program today. If not, we'll be following up afterwards with additional materials. Thanks, Larry. Next, I'd like to introduce our China action. This year, and almost every year of Get on the Bus since its inception, we've had a focus on human rights issues in Tibet, China, and other areas under Chinese occupation. And this year, we are calling for the end of mass detentions of Uyghur people and the unconditional release of all prisoners of conscience, including Ilham Tohti and Tibetan political prisoners. And want to give a special welcome to our next speaker, Johar Ilham, who is the daughter of Ilham Tohti. She's an activist, advocate, writer, And we're really thrilled that she was able to join us here today to talk about the situation for Uyghur people and for her father. And I'm going to make you a co-host. And ask you to what? Great. So I'll turn over to you, Johar.
Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. Hello, everyone. My name is Jawhar Ilham. I am Uyghur. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank Amnesty for having me today, and thank you all for being part of this event. I'd like to share with you a little bit about what I know and what my family and I have been through for the past few years. It has been over 4 years since I heard anything of my father, and it has been 7 years since I have last spoken to him, and it has been over 8 years since I have seen my father. My father, Ilham Tohti, for people who are not very familiar with, he was a scholar and an intellectual in China. And he was one of the very first Uyghur who was arrested. And he was also the first person who holds a Chinese passport that received a life sentence since the Cultural Revolution. But all he ever did was fostering dialogue between the Han Chinese group and the Uyghur communities, and for advocating respect for religious and cultural beliefs of our people, and for equal opportunity in pursuing our dreams and the things that motivate us. So my father is a very is a noble man. I'm not saying it because I'm his daughter and that I'm just being biased. He is a man with a big heart, and he has won numerous awards, including the 2019 European Sakharov Award. He was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize 5 times. But over 8 years ago, on February 2nd, 2013, my father was stopped at the airport in Beijing, and he was stopped from leaving the country. And yes, I remember the date very clearly. My father and I were on our way to America together. He was to be a visiting scholar at IU, Indiana University. And I was a teenager, and I was studying Arabic, hoping to become a translator, and was only planning to stay in the US for 2 or 3 weeks just to help my father settle down. But as you can see, I'm still here and never left, and not working on translating Arabic, but working on translating my family's experiences and stories and telling them to the world, just to get my family safe and free. And at this moment, I am on the other side of the world, away from my family and my home. And that was the last time I saw my father and my 2 little brothers. My father was released home from the airport a few days after he was detained at the airport, but his freedom was still restrained. He wasn't really allowed to teach, nor really be allowed to go far from his apartment without permission. He was tailed to everywhere. In another word, he was under house arrest. And that continued for 11 months. But my father never complained, because it had become a normality for his life and our life. Growing up, we had police staying at our places, we had bugging devices in our apartment, and it became a normality for our lives. And the Chinese government had detained him, threatened him, and put him under house arrest many times. But my father always told me, "My dear, it's okay. It's okay, and let's be strong." January 15th, 2014, 11 months after we were separated at the airport, more than 20 policemen broke into our apartment in Beijing and arrested my father in front of my 2 little brothers, who were 4 and 7 years old. And my poor little brothers were deeply traumatized, and they had to grow up without a father figure for 7 years. One of them even started having heart issues. And my stepmother had to raise 2 boys all on her own with very little income, because her job wouldn't secure her position and would threaten if she speaks up, she will lose her job. And I had to live away from my father and family on the other side of the world for the past 8 years. And it has been 4 years since I haven't heard any news of my father, as I mentioned earlier. And family visits were no longer allowed since 2017. When my father first was arrested in 2014, he was shackled, beaten, denied for food twice, and each time was for 10 days. So it makes me wonder what's his current condition now, because none of us had heard anything. My family and I have deep concerns over his current safety and his health condition. So as you can see, the treatment of an internationally known scholar like my father is already this bad. And I wonder how bad the situation and conditions are for the other Uyghur families who don't even have family relatives that are able to speak up for them overseas, and for those who are not able to let their stories and names to be told to the world. And maybe some of you have heard that over the past few years, that it was estimated by scholars and researchers that Chinese government has rounded up over 1 to 1.8 million Uyghurs and other Turkic and Muslim majority people, and been sending them to prison camps, labor camps, or in other words, what the Chinese government calls it, vocational training schools. And some have been transported away from their homes to other parts of China where people have been working in factories under conditions that strongly indicate forced labor. And those are systematic and state-sponsored forms of forced labor, which intersects with other egregious human rights abuses. And this includes undermining the Uyghur customs and culture, widespread arbitrary detention, political indoctrination, transformation, family separation, pervasive surveillance, and forced sterilization, gender-based sexual harassment, and so much more. And the Chinese government claims that those so-called vocational training schools with barbed fences and watchtowers are for vocational training, poverty alleviation purposes. I really wish that was true, and I promise you, I really wish that was the truth. But unfortunately, the truth that I learned are that families have been separated and hearts have been torn. Children can no longer call their family or even know where their family members are, if they're even alive. And children and wives are screaming and crying for the missing or the loss of their fathers, husbands, brothers, uncles, aunts, sisters, cousins, and mothers. I can't even count anymore. And therefore, today I'm speaking to you today. I would like to ask you, please tell the world that this is not okay to be still happening in the 21st century. And some of you may have already heard my story many times, but in my heart, in the Uyghur people's heart, our voices still haven't been heard yet. And it hasn't been heard by the Chinese government yet. My father is still serving a life sentence in a Chinese prison. Hundreds of thousands of even millions of Uyghurs are still not free yet. And therefore, I will continue speaking up on this issue until the Chinese government releases all these innocent souls and allow them to get back to their families and their loved ones. And that day I will know, okay, yes, our voices finally have been heard. And thank you very much. At last, I would like to share one action item with you all. If people are interested in helping, I'm going to copy and send the link to the chat. So please visit this website. It's called enduyghurforcedlabor.org. This website is for a coalition to end Uyghur forced labor. It's a coalition of over 70 human rights organizations around the world. It's not only US based. It's a bunch of human rights organizations who are very concerned about the Uyghur situation, have came together and they have been calling on brands and corporates to act on this matter and stop being complicit in the forced labor situation of the Uyghur communities. So if you are part of an organization, if you're a business owner, if you are an investor, you can endorse the call to action that was launched by this coalition. And if you just at the homepage, if you scroll down a little bit, you will see the form for endorsing. You will also see all the endorsements, the endorsed list, you will see over 391 endorsements from the world, from over 40 countries. And if you're individual, you can still endorse it. It just won't be listed on the website, but you will be able to get their email updates, and you will know what the coalition has been doing. So if you're on the website, you can also see the related action. You will be able to find specific action items for, doesn't matter where you base, if you're based in UK, US, Canada, or Australia, or it doesn't matter where you're from, there are action items for different people, different community. You can, such as like petitions and letters to send out to senators, congressmen, and also webinars. Sorry, my English is not working today. And there are different ways you can be able to, help contribute to and be part of this cause. And Uyghur people needs you. And thank you very much. Sorry for taking too long.
Thank you so much, Johar, for your testimony, for your persistence, your insights, and we will continue to take action and stand in solidarity with you and your family, and until your father is free. Now I'd like to welcome Tenzin Yangzam. Yangzam is the grassroots coordinator for Students for a Free Tibet, and is also an advocacy officer with the Tibet Association of Boston. The Amnesty 133 does a lot of work with both Students for a Free Tibet and the Tibetan Association of Boston, and we're really excited to have Yangzam with us here today to talk a bit about the work that Students for a Free Tibet, SFT, is doing around political prisoners being detained by the Chinese government, including Anya Sendra, environmental activists, and others. Yangzam.
Hi, thanks, Kelly. Thank you, Kelly, and the rest of Amnesty 133 for putting together this event, and all the speakers who are here today. I wanted to speak a little bit about my background. I'm a Tibetan American born in exile in Dharamsala, India. And just a really quick, brief background story, like the Chinese Communist Party violently occupied Tibet in the 1950s, and along the way in doing so, they have destructed many sacred monasteries, cultural centers, arrested spiritual, political leaders, tortured Tibetan people. And so my father, at the age of 8, he escaped Tibet into India, and my mother's mom did the same thing. So she was also born in exile. So the Tibetan issue is very personal to me. And one of the ways that I've been able to channel some of my frustrations into activism has been through Students for a Free Tibet, SFT. And so SFT is a chapter-based organization of young people and activists around the world that campaign for Tibetans' fundamental right to political freedom. So we have chapters in the US, all around the world, which are our national networks, Canada. And I've been involved in SFT at a young age. I would attend a lot of trainings, especially in the Boston area. So I was lucky to have so many mentors and role models in my Boston community here. And I also got the chance to intern at Students for Free Tibet last year. So now I'm currently the grassroots coordinator. And so I just engage and support the US chapters here. But today I really wanted to highlight a special activist named Anya Sendra. He is a Tibetan nomad and activist in Tibet. So he is a very well-respected community leader who has fought against corruption and environmental destruction, as well as he constantly advocates for poor Tibetans in his community. So when Tibetans inside Tibet begin to gain some popularity and respect among a large group of people, China gets very nervous, and Anya's case is no exception to that. For daring to fight for his people and sign up to the CCP, Anya was arrested in September of 2018 in Gade County, which is in eastern Tibet. So his ridiculous charge was provoking troubles, forming a mob to disturb social order, and other evil cases. And so the provoking troubles charge is actually a very vaguely worded offense under Article 293 of the Chinese criminal law that has been increasingly used in recent years to persecute human rights defenders and other activists who are being critical of Xi Jinping and the Chinese government. And after he was arrested, he was beaten by the Chinese police and he was not permitted to see his wife and family. And so it wasn't until 48 days later that Anya was finally allowed to see a lawyer. And so after waiting a long time for his lawyer, Anya didn't see his day in court until 14 months after his arrest. So it wasn't until December of 2019, more than a year after his arrest in 2018, that he was found guilty in a sham trial of provoking troubles and was sentenced to 7 years in prison. And so Anya's lawyers appealed this verdict, and he was supposed to have an appeal hearing actually last year, April 27th, 2020. But unfortunately, this was postponed, and Anya is still suffering today in Chinese prison. And so a little bit of activism on behalf of Anya Sengda. Before we knew Anya's appeal case was going to be postponed, Students for Free Tibet called on the US Consulate General in Chengdu in China to send representation to request access to Anya's trial. And so in prior cases, representation from embassies at the trials of Tibetan human rights defenders has made a really big difference in the outcome of the trials. And so SFT firmly believes that embassies and consulates based in China can encourage greater transparency in Anya's case and possibly lead to a more positive outcome. So in April 2020, we wrote directly to governments around the world, urging them to monitor Anya's case and call for his immediate release in their communication with Beijing. And so we know that creating this increasing global awareness for Anya's case and shaming China for their mistreatment of human rights defenders can go a very long way in achieving positive outcomes for Tibetan political prisoners in general. And so that's why also, in addition to the capital and embassy level advocacy, SFT also constantly appeals to the international climate movement and international human rights activists to seek solidarity in the hopes that our non-Tibetan allies will also advocate for Anya Sengda and other political prisoners like him. One way we have reached out to the international community about Anya is by creating a video about his case featuring human rights and climate activists from a variety of movements. And so this video was able to garner thousands of views and helped educate a lot of people. And you can also check that out on our Instagram page. And then I just wanted to talk briefly about Anya's case and how his case is so much more than just one activist and is actually very representative of the plight of human rights inside Tibet. The arrest and sentence for Anya Sengda takes place amid a renewed crackdown against the Tibetan people by the Chinese government. On May 1st, the so-called ethnic unity law came into effect, which further undermines Tibetan identity and endangers Tibetan activists living under CCP control. And so his case is very representative of the wider human rights situation in Tibet. I would encourage people who would want to get more involved in the Tibetan freedom movement to go on our website, sign up to our mailing list. We often do a lot of petitions for people like Anya and other political prisoners. I would encourage you to get involved in a chapter, start a community chapter. We have a very strong chapter here locally in Boston that a couple of folks here are on and very involved in. And so I just wanted to close out by saying, if you have any questions, please feel free to jot them in the chat, and I'd be happy to answer them here later another time, whenever. So thank you for having me today. And I just wanted to say that, the power really lies in the people. And I truly believe that together we can make that difference for whether it's political prisoners, abolishing death row, stopping the genocide going on in East Turkestan, and so much more. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, Youngzam. So we are really thrilled to have our keynote speaker speak next, Tendu Wangchen. Many of you who've been part of Get on the Bus know Tendu Wangchen Law's story. He was imprisoned by the Chinese government back in 2008 for his work as a filmmaker in the creation of the film Leaving Fear Behind, which highlighted the stories of Tibetans in the lead up to the 2008 Beijing Olympics. and he was sentenced to 6 years imprisonment for subversion and served those 6 years. From 2009 to 2014, Get on the Bus Actions called for his release, and we were able to work with his wife, Hamoso, and his children to be able to share his story and also what was going on for other prisoners of conscience inside of Tibet. And since his release from prison and eventual escape from under Chinese rule, Thendu Wangchenla has been living in the US, and we're really thrilled that he's here today to share his story and call to action. And we're also really grateful for Rinchen Domala, who will be translating. And so I'll turn it over to you.
고기도
고기도.
로서 아니 토머 아니 길리준니 아니 다가난징기 다 제치니온 속박이 처음나 받아 아니 다가난징 드랑기 다 촌든딜라 년식지게 남바 상말라 잔지다시 될러셔이 아니 다가난징기 아니 남바 존년도 아니 드랑기 촌든딜라 년식지 들어대 하징기 가우죠 땅가로이나 아니 본노데
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank Amnesty International and organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my experience.
땅가로이나 뜻보노니 틀론장주기 메지 다난징가니 호탄 두녀요와 말이 다 베스기 지 구토다 딘데 강요요와 말이 땅가라이나 시디당 아니 정된당 라니라 간경기 메지 다 보는 게 니츠다 하정 대두부지리 다 가티나 준nen중기 지자나 중기 아니 보디 체스글럭자 베초당니 아니 저정라면 아주지고요 빠따 보는라 야지당 요주다 아니 디수게 중니 다 가티나 지 자능 주지니 제치랑진라 저지고요 아리 땅아주 지 니스토지기다 제치기 젠덴소테 다 자능라 제바리 뜻티테디 삼바타나징기고 지 자치몽부지 종국이 아니 로미 도당 주니 다나제 자능 중기 다나제 killen치와리 다 제치 젠덴소케 촉바디나 그런주기지 설고르간다 아니 로미 도당 디주 주지니 다 제도 시세나세 지니 지와리 땅 아주이나 때라 이치지니 아니 지 보는 게 딱 뉴욕이니스 보사 연속라 고정지니 아니 디주다 젠저지와리 딱 보는 게 묘니 땅땅 다나징기지 올림픽 때라 다체 가리요나 아니 디주 지지 삼바니 다나징기다 때라테니 아니 지존지와리 지존지디 삼바이던 지존지땅 디주 만다와 아니 지 가성 재미 주니 미스위치게 하마고바 수수런이나 하마고바 땅구나 그만 나쁘고니 딘데지니 라니니 루치를 하즈 란도세 노모게 하마고바 딘데기 니탄치게 오는 지존지와리 단 지존지니 라
Don't this going to show us the mama shanning magoing Johan. So I was born and raised in Tibet. I have never been to school. I don't have any schooling experience, but I'm a person who loves peace and I believe in truth. In 2008, China was giving the opportunity to host Olympic, and that being said, in the name of development, China accepted that they hold the values of Olympic. So that's when I started to interview the Tibetan people, what their experience and feelings. And because of that, I was arbitrarily put into detention and disappeared for 1 year.
아니 바로 때라 아니 다 니동타야 아니 너쪽 라면아서 땅야 안땅 알아라오이나 다 니마 든당 센제라 니쿠기 마지와 칼라사기 마지와 다나징 단 저쪽 라면아서 지고요바 다 바로 때라 다 할위 년까 친구지다 아니 다나징 메모부치도세 머소 땅고요바리 다 가서 하마고 딘제게 니타치 다 니타 두케디 다 베티지 게 친구다 아니 자적게 니타치 치와리 다나징 아니 다 타마텔라 다지 루트게 루트제바리 아니 가짜 정도기 니먼츠니 아니 동간원이 루트라 단두시 지금 니소 메비거네 아니 니 리카치야 다는 징기 아니 코치 가르치고리 근데 칼라 사야다 따지 시르다 디즈에 주메주 아니 주도 니마리라 주도 주스 중아 딘데라 리카치 지바리
After that, for 7 days and 8 nights, they didn't allow me to sleep, no food. And finally, they blamed me for separatists and gave me 6 years of imprisonment. And during that time, I had to work for 14 to 15 hours every day.
제스 좀 바치라 쳐서바이나 아니 종강론에 루카시 내야 축구 말이 종강나 축기 니모니종 아니 메시지라다 그런라단 지금 몽낙 보조야 다나징이 지속강라 레바이나 리카 마르와 아니 지 종강론에 용디 삼바이다 리포티즈 종네 저 아니 다지 종강론에 나자요 주고 미팅데 몽부년 등 위네게 리팅데 몽부요 디즈년 뜻이야 니 슬로라 레바이나 다나징이 다 멘칸 타야다 조땡기 강라 딱 보지마투아 아니 사차 가사콜라 지 수수기 산이나 루마치고 아니 거한 루나 때라 축진시고야라 스파기 다 딘데기 랑기 아니 지 제수동바 몽부진 대통선 주고 요리다 몽부진이나 단단나 온창ချင်း주니 아니 딘데기다 강에 지 요바 마세다 제수동바 자마이 제수동바게 너무 뛰서 다나지기다 강에 쳐야 지축 돈이다 지 그정라 피야 딘데기다 스치질라서 지고 요리
The tortures and challenges are not just faced in the prison itself for political prisoners. The life after coming out of prison is very difficult. For example, when you get out of the prison, there's no work opportunity. There's a lot of social stigmas and defamations. And a lot of prisoners, because of torture, they get terminal illnesses and there's no healthcare services for them. And on the top of that, there's no freedom of movement. So you can't even move from one place to another, and not just for the individual, but for the entire family.
딱 제위찬이 딱 자능기 고 루아미기 도탕디 딱 자원이 루아미기 도탕디 자원이 요 말이 딱 보발라 총나 자능기 딱 자능 마쇼 종게 오나 요주기 딱 전혀 머리질라 총마이나 딱 루아미 도탕디 딱고 지용기 정말 고요 말이 딱 이나야 머리띠에 년가 친구 머리 잠이라 동고 요가기다 스치지 메토드락터 지고요 딱 흑벌도 본다오이나 보기 크리에이티브나 돌로다 잘 친구 주요리 다는 징기 지 기 디조 잠에주야 아니 줄루 당 디조 잠에주야 딘데 손자 아니 다니통 그기 그니 존디 딱 흑벌도 보기는 아니 지 랑미 서방야기 땅구쟁아리 미자다 땅 아줄럭게 누스 랑미 메서땅의 자능종라 다 자능종기다 나선쟁이 스치데라 오고지요리 다나진티 제치 랑진기다 제치기지 용제다 디주거니 때라 나파창마투아 때라 자초치마투아 다 디주 하징이다 롱패랑진기 니당치 치고요리 다나진기지 계획송조진이 디주이나 니몽자메 나투인 저선지야라 스파다 다시한 신라위나 다나진 계획기거니 저선진이 봉가라 루트제야리 다나진 고익기거니 지 고익송조진이 디주이나 다나진이다 니몽자메 나투서다 다나진이다 아니야 상자다위나 다 딘제 딘이다 혼상다위다 용탕다고 치요 실로라 군이 루준다고 아니지 통통지 레요리 다 다나진 아주 하마고하게 딘제게 주니 다 몽부치 단단나 히데요 다 런류 미서 동바치고 많이 봤다 되게 제존이 양이 니 또 몽부치 슬로레 마토 아니 미 몽부치 단단나 라이 니지 런류 미서 또 아니 지 드라유키즈니 또 디주게 지 pombu 덕보처니 아니 디주게 기퍼다 디주 슬로라쿠니 디주 참아나 다나진 때 니몽다메 나투 루 몽불나다 루트제 수준인데나 단단나다 몽부치 보노니 두세 틀헤데요
The ethnic minorities are facing a lot of human rights issues in China, and specifically in Tibet, there's a lot of issues around cultural genocide, ethnic genocide, environmental and also religious due to such restrictions, and there's no freedom of speech and freedom of press, and the international communities are not allowed to come and investigate Tibet. Due to such repression, more than 150 self-immolations happened since 2009, and Anya Sanda and Tashi Wanchu are some of the examples among many political prisoners who are imprisoned due to their work for cultural preservation, language preservation, environmental preservation in Tibet. So a lot of people are still in Tibet and they are still suffering, who are giving information outside. So they're still under control and repression too.
Ta poti ta dai na dan zalung gi ta zongkhan chi chi ki juri wari khbar to ta nga zo nge mai na ta jini serji zili ta tigi kong poke jini ta ne poke chulu de zo zame ta ya me mombu zongju che ta dai na ta na jing ta ngi se to poke jini serji chi lakhtar chi go yori po ki ta shangzhou mong zu pe ta su jung gi chui tan ji de zo ta me par zu go yo ba ta na jing gi po me ji la ta do pa yo me la ma ti ba zan da gang gi ni po gi ji go yo ba ta na jing gi ta ko ji jana jongita chinso ranglu ke tongdi sirwa la khayirni nin dutin la khayirni ta na je jana ni ta min burchen chi ta pokina na dusi ni pochi gi chigo yoba ani po ki chi sosuwa tong tomba po ani ta na je khili nyen ka ta tinje mombu chi ta zon chi ni ka son chemi la chur yoba ani ta ni che na ta na je gi ni ton ni shi gi chida jani gu chu ni ta po ki nanglo ne shukchen yo chu gi ta uni gi chi sosuwa mi cheden mriki ke ida tizula ta chi junzin chini ta na jing sosuwa tinje mombu chi ta zon chini ka son chemi to churi wari.
Tibet is one of the biggest prison in the world. Right now, there's a second wave of cultural revolution happening in Tibet. Traditional way of living is under threat. Thousands and thousands of Chinese are migrating in Tibet in the name of economic development. And a lot of educators and scholars who are advocating and promoting Tibetan culture and language are imprisoned. So it's an ongoing process that is still happening in Tibet right now.
Ta trainer chi te ta nguni gi ji cha cha go tang ani ji ko ji gar su gore 지 동체 다 딘데 라면 나츠 숑고요 와. 다 나징 일단 랜더 정징기 다 드레치 마데 다 가조 오세도 부지 치워래. 다 나징 다 챙기다 드레치로 와. 인디 삼바 단 디나라 아니 년가 친구지 치용고요 와. 데다 사고 치워래. 특별히 잔능기 벤저디 아니 베진 루야기다 슈 친구지 차단 차진 바리. 다 나징기 다 잔능 머슈 정기다 고자르 송기다 란룽 엠바디 아니다 제치정진라 체니 누구요 바디다 나중 이월도 동남지 구역이니 당지 치워리 또 خبر도 제치기 지 총라다 디주기는라 다 잔나게 잘하다 고 프체 자차기 눈치야가 가주딘데 지금도 땅아라나 아메리카레니 루슨 흐즈마진 주요 말이 다 잔나니 주주기 잘 몽보치다 가리나 자차기 규주들라 레바기 좋아지 용기도 다 디주 자능게 지 잘로 존이 디주 정말 몽 치왔다 정박이 주고 요리 당 알아도 정상나니 어디 삼바다는 지기 다 제케 몽부치기 돌로지 바리다 디 단당이 디는 인지계기다 시시기면 동이 자케시나 주고고면 디 아프가니스탄 트라나징기다 질라키 아니 이동 디주기다 먹미기 야고니기 돌로 다 사야몽부 주고 요리 트라나지 자나나다 고 정박이 지금 정보티 할리위다 친구리 아니 정바 디줄라 라자메와 디줄라 두총이메게 아니 지금 이소메와 딘제기다 돌로 몽부치다 슬로라 동용고요와기다 남바치 오세도보기 종한만이 주고요와 아니 가랑게 디나나 가랑에 나타도 죽라 종한만이 되지 삼바 아니 도록게 저지 잘라다 몽부치다 지 겐켈라 수바딘데 몽부치다 슬록게 잘로 몽부치 주고요 디주 가도다 지구에 되게 친구리 생
In the era of 21st century, we are living in an era of internet and massive competition. And China is one of the economic giant. And when you look into the international trade and market, you know, a lot of the things are made in China. So when you think about where these things are made and who made it, then oftentimes these are the prisoners who are making and producing the clothes and the things that we use in our daily life. And they are the forced laborers without any salary. And I was one of those. So it is really important to reassess the trade and development and how all of these are produced in China.
따따나제 자노종기 아니 벤줄기다 지금 용그레니다 야당 다 간주지야기 다 남바징우세 도보기 통요리 다나쟁기 지금 자노종기 지금 망고 동야리 다나쟁기 다 지금 총례기 좋아지야 아니 디주 지제케다 지 이시야기다 지케 몽보치나 디주 총례기 괜찮은 쪽디 삼바 다나쟁기 아니 보당 아니 이크로아 당 다나쟁 티벤다 디주 자노기다 자시인바 아니 디주 지 겐쟁이나 지레라 수파 다 딘제기 지 고사르송기 아니 밀라 수트지야 아니 밀라단 지크지야 밀라 노슈테야 다나징이 다 디주 할리다 년가 친구지 쳔루고 요리 다 잔나게 햄바디나 단다이나 다 슈치르치르 단다이나 다 시진진 진짜 대반이죠 잔는게 막슈자체야 아니 수수기다 산제요 쪽이다 지케몽부치라 아니 다지 잔주지야기다 잔주지야다 아니 지금 지크지야기다 딘제기다 다스몽부치 제고요와
China is using their economic power to threat other countries. Whenever they make trade agreement with other countries, they always force the other countries to agree that Tibet and Taiwan, all of these are part of China. Since the rise of Xi Jinping, this is becoming even more dangerous. So we have to be aware of the threat that China is putting into the international community.
타나징게 아니 가지고 직단 루아미 토탄시아라고 장담시아라고 시티시아라고 단 라니시아라고 딘데기 다 타니 몽부치기 와리 다 디주 참마 벤조기 트니 아니 디주기 지지다 디주기 렌탄 디주 아니 할레 년글란 로고요 와기다 남바치 통고요 와디다 사우리샤 덴디 삼바 아니 지 가지고 디기 강라 단다이나 지 무투트 두론지 구야 제저지 구야 아니 디주지 미 참마라 고툭데 제구야디 할리위게 침부지 통긴도 말한
With rise of China's power, I personally feel like the values like human rights and truth and peace and all of these are under threat. And I feel like it is very important that all of us pay attention to the implication of what it means when China uses economy as the power tool.
아니 가지고 참았던 루아미 임바차니 아니 지금 단 루아미기 단 지기 도던 디 손조지에던 아니 디 강랑 가지고 리가 몽부지 지태요 바 가지고 때라 너치 통터바디 단 가정게 냐뇽거니 더 측득 조보거니 셰트고요 요아리 단 가정 냐뇽당 지금 수수 나 주전티 주요 요아리 지금 땅가라고 있는 단 직절 논년스니 단 그만 유시상게 논년 지금 유아리 논년디나 고지 게터 침보다 아니 지 딘데 사안이 말이 되라 땅코 미 바로 보기 뉴욕이니 수직시요리 수수비나 사는 게 저스까지 지가니 저주게 논년 딘데 지리 딘데 이 사마 되라 다 제치 jontan jonde 마임바기 다 촉바 몽부치기다 루아미 도당라 도노요니 몽부치기 되라 동생년치 당대기 강라 아니 지다 마세 되라 동생년치 당 아니 խ버도 되게 강라다 제치 강니 지 jonde 마임바기 촉바 아니 지금 용다 디주기 니네요 주기 촉바 몽부치기 돈년달라 동생년치게 가탁다든지 몽부치 제요리 다디 척징이 고 돈년이 고니시바나지 게터 친구들인데 다무 친구들인데 말이나다 미몽부치 항상야 다나징기 데라 동생년치 지야기 단 노아치 통요리 다나지 자노 융크로즈이나 다 돈년데라 컨트롤이야 다나징 아라이나다 동han나니 실과 레치삼바에 레니에다 자능기 소일리 콘텐츠 몽불라 투바레 디즈 투지삼바 아니 지치강라다 슈칭안 바지요와 아니 자능기 다 송야 디즈 실과 저와기 다 컨주 롱로지 삼바에 때라 단단 노아치 통요바디 다 무세도 부쳐
ngân này chưa được đâu that message giờ that draw me top down that the ngarani cái nhóm nhau để cho tiếng con như thế ba.
ngazuge ti gala me chama sanshuma chwa che te gala lika chiwa na ani che ngin du si ta.
Oh, okay. One thing that I personally experience is each and every individual has power to make changes and also bring justice. And for example, my case is just an example, and I went through it. I'm, because of the documentary Dictate, Leaving Behind Fear, there's a lot of international and especially non-governmental organizations who showed solidarity, and they spread the word to the outside world. It has a huge impact in the Chinese government itself. So, I believe that all of us have the power to make changes in the world to uphold human rights value and truth.
네, 다는 제가 알아나 슬로라 동강나는 슬로라 레니다 로슨스 대바리 로슨스 로슨을 아니 자능게 단적지야 단티술라 소양땅 요 말이 단다 두르 땅래 아니 다마데 수수기 다 지솔이 랑게 치와딘 데니 아니 수수기 몽부지 리콘지니 니 슬로라 주야 주쇼 용야기다 센터 제바리 센터 제디 삼바 아니 미츠마 파스포트 구고리다 아릴라 레바리스나 미츠마 항승고 간다시 레바리스다 당가이는 파스포트 딘데 럭바기 때 지가요 말이 이나 영가는 때 요바디 다 담바당 아니 수수기 다 오빠 아니 장den티 가나 다 때요 다 때라 때니다 용다 아니 지 용제 많이 바게 다미 몽부지기 동선 연지지니 아니 장den라 자출당 아니 가랑기 칼리 제니 때라 민진지니 아니 가라나 탄데라 아르라 트리와 다 디주 가조 리카치 지와이나 다 너아치 통고요 바기다 무세 도부기 다 본토송 부치 치와 다 가라나 드란데라 용이 아주 참만도세 도랑지고요 아니 남바주 참아이나 너아요 아니 단다이나 아주 무투듯한 로미 지기 도당다 아니 지 로미기다 가두 세야티기 강나 아주 단다 무투도 시적고야디 당 아주 로미 지금 바차니 아주 참말라 링겐디 요아리 단다이나 하버도 깨스웨 비다 링게 친부지 치고요 아리 생도 아주이나 참하게 너아치 동바이나 다 정된 세야데라 고 자카치 요바디 가랑경이 테니 가랑경이 데라 이치에요 아니 단단하장 무슨 단단하장 무슨 또 보기 런드리 좀 요아리 생고 아니 또 아니 남바 참말라 지시에 트럼펫이가 오죠.
After I was released from the prison and coming to America, a lot of people have questions. How did you get here? And I did not even have passport. But what I had was I had truth, and I showed the world that what it is to have the value of truth and all the human rights issue that is happening, right? The stories that I have. So because of solidarity and support of so many people, today I'm here and talking to you. So that's why do not give up, and all of us have the power to make peace and truth and human rights prevail in this world. So thank you so much for the opportunity, for inviting me here, and thank you again.
Thank you so much for your words, and Wangchen Ma and Rinchen Ma for translating. We are so grateful for your presence, for your testimony, for your willingness to share your story, and also the ongoing call to action. And we hope that when we get on the bus back in New York, that you can join us there in person. Next, I'd like to turn it over to one of our colleagues, Vitek, and we're really excited that you're here. Vitek's been a longtime friend of Amnesty 133, based in Poland and doing work in the country of Georgia, and wanted to just turn it over to Vitek, talk a little bit about the power of activism and solidarity. Oops.
And touched by everything what was happening today. I mean, I hope you can hear me well. Yes, okay. So I just want to say that it was worth to survive all the year of pandemic, of different Zooms, to have this Zoom so meaningful and so powerful. And from first testimony, I'm really feel like this is something that will give me a power to work for the next months. And I'm so really proud that I can be part of Get on the Bus that I wanted to be part of for 20 years almost, I think. And I want to say that our adventure also started somehow of joint work with Get on the Bus, with support of Rick, of Boston Group, Cambridge Group, when we did the 10th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre. And we always had on 4th of June, we had this group of protesters. They usually were 5-6 people, sometimes 20, sometimes they were joined by some group. But because we did this Get on the Bus action during that day on the 10th anniversary, we brought 2 big buses of activists from small towns of Poland, like Płock and Wyszków. And when those people who were usually coming every year to see, the small protests, they were so amazed when they saw these young people coming from those really not big towns, with a big group, with a big transparent of Amnesty International Płock, Amnesty International Wyszków, to show the power of organized movement. And that somehow, I think, it was in a way proof that we can do everything. And in fact, 2.5 years after that, we started Polish, and 3.5 years after that, we started global action that is now called Right for Rights. And without Get on the Bus, I would say probably Right for Rights, which as Amnesty call it, the biggest human rights action, would not happen. So in a way, I'm so really thrilled, because also I realized this how powerful, powerful sides, I would say, powerful groups. From one side, we have a human rights heroes and people who survived the worst, situations. From the other side, I think this action is a kind of a tribute to all of you, that people who are, having this determination that despite the job, the work they do on a regular basis, they can join together and bring these issues to the table, bring it, strongly. And I hope maybe one day I will also be with you at the in New York, in a different embassies, different places where the protests take part, because I know it's so much important and powerful. And in the end, I wanted, because also Dondup and whole Tibetan team is for us are also somehow heroes. I wanted to share one action we did, which was in March 2008, the year of Olympic Games in China. And if it's possible to share one action, to share the screen. And okay, I'm still waiting, but okay. The action was based also on cooperation with the biggest Polish newspaper, also created by former prisoners of conscience, including Adam Michnik, Gazeta Wyborcza, who at that time had 500,000 copies. And in a day of solidarity with Tibet, together with this newspaper, we decided to publish, they decided, but together with us, to publish a cover page of this newspaper, 500,000 copies with a Tibetan flag. But still, I don't know who is now hosting, but I think I cannot send you this. I will send you a link, I guess.
Yeah, you're a co-host. You should be able to do it, Vitek, but I'll make you the host just for a minute, just to see if that.
Okay. I'm sorry, because I'm now, all right. I'm sorry, that's the technical thing. I'm talking from a phone, but if you could give it to WH and Warsaw, that's the place where I can share the screen. So that's my fault. Okay, but anyway, I just wanted to show those pictures to all of you, not only to our main keynote speaker, but to also to Tenzin, to our Tibetan friends, because this yes. So I'm still waiting, but I think it's. Okay, I can try to describe it, and we'll send you a link, so you will have a chance to see it in any case. But I wanted to share especially one picture. So the action was that you can do the, you can present, you can the message was that Tibetan flag is forbidden in Tibet. Of just having this flag in a public space, you can be arrested. And the idea of our message to the Polish people was just get this flag, get to some point, some place in your classroom, in your village sign, if you are in a small village, and take a picture, and somebody take a picture of you with this flag and post it. And I just send you this link to the whole gallery of those people, in all around Poland. People were posting, posting the pictures of them with the Tibetan flag. And I guess, there is one picture, I think I also will share it now with you, just by sending the link, that I think is one of the most powerful message that could, I think, be sent out to the regimes. Because you see, there is a small village, and the small village, as I learned, half of the people who live there, they went to this action. They brought the Tibetan flags. You see, there is a older, younger generations. There is even a local dog, and they are together in this one small action that all of them holding flags for Tibet, free Tibet, independent Tibet flags. But of course, their message is to show the solidarity and support with victims of human rights in Tibet. And imagine this. Of course, this is a long struggle, as Rick says. It's a very, it takes a lot of efforts and energy to work constantly. And, Tibetan people can feel like they are yet far away from their victory. But if you see this picture, you realize that sooner or later that they will win, because no Chinese, no other regime, no any dictatorship could make those people in this village to do anything else. They can be, and the people should be always on the side of victims. And thank you so much for get on the bus for human rights, for doing this work, because this is amazing and fantastic, and I'm thrilled. I hope maybe some of you will have a chance to visit us in Georgia for One Caucasus Festival. That's another thing we do with Rick. But I'm really, really happy to see you all, and thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Vitek. And actually, if you don't mind, if you could make me the host again, that was like that game time move didn't really work.
Yes, I'm
out
sorry.
well.
I just yes, but now I have to do it from a phone. I will do it in a second.
Thank you. So just want to, as we wrap up today, want to thank all of you for participating, all of you who will be watching this online later, and a special thanks to all of our action coordinators and speakers, especially Derek, Scott, Babu Ram, Arthi, Larry, Johar, Yongzam, Thendu Wangchenla, Vitek, and our translator, Rinchin. We're really grateful for your participation, for sharing your story, the call to action. We hope that in 2022, we'll be able to actually get on the bus again and be together in New York, but we know that the international solidarity and global action together is critical, whether it's a pandemic or not. And so our plan is to share a copy of this video to everyone who registered. We'll send it out to the email list. We'll share it on social media. We'll also take all the links in the chat to put them together to share out with you. We ask you to check out our website again, gotb.org, for the letter writing actions. We'll be posting more materials on there as well. And hope that you will continue to do the work around these issues of human rights in Sri Lanka, the US, China, Tibet, the Uyghur region, Honduras, in your own community, bringing it back to your own Amnesty International chapter, your own schools, workplace, to family and friends, and to be able to amplify the messages you heard today. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.